Thanks for joining me. If you want to display your watercolours like this one that I've mounted onto a deep edge canvas, then you need to seal it. And what I'm going to use today is Dorland's wax medium. So it's a wax and then they've mixed it with a bit of resin, and so you apply it and then it hardens. And so I've already done this one. It's impossible to see because all it does is add a beautiful luster. And in fact, it says on the pack that after you've applied it, you can buff it, and you will get a really beautiful luster happening. So it's not coming off on here. And just to do a little test, a little bit risky, but I'm going to try it. See how it balls up there? I'm just going to get a tissue. See how it's just balling up instead of going into the watercolour paper. Oh, fantastic. No colour is coming off that. So this is one of the ways that you can display your watercolours. You seal it and then glue it onto a pre-stretched canvas. That's the back. This is Irodori. So I've already done this one, and so I'm going to show you how you prepare the surface. It's really easy. It's really easy to do. You just buy a jar of this Dorland's wax medium. There's another type of wax medium that you can buy that's a little more stinky, but this one doesn't smell. So you get a rag, and I think I'll take my ring off actually. You could wear gloves, but I don't think it's necessary. It's not, I don't think it's toxic. So in this example, I've taken a watercolour and I've glued it onto the outside of a book that I'm making, an artist book, and you just rub it on. It's as simple as that. It's kind of hard to see exactly where it is and where it isn't, so I just make sure I'm generous with the amount that I put on, and I didn't give the other one many layers either. But you can go for layers and layers if you want to get a really beautiful build-up and get one of those lovely waxy lusters. It doesn't seem to affect the watercolour in any way, but it definitely protects it. A minimum of an hour to dry, and probably much more. I don't know, because there's no instructions on the container about drying time and how long it takes. These are lots small watercolours that I'm prepping for books that I'm making, and I want to give the outside some protection, because if this is going to be a cover, it's going to get sat onto tables, and you know, maybe who is ever using it sits it on something wet, and then your watercolour like this would just come off, because we know watercolour remains permanently soluble. The alternative to a wax medium like this is to coat your watercolour in an acrylic medium. Like, you can use a glue, you could use, you know, like Mod Podge if you wanted to. Got a lot on there. It goes onto absolutely any surface, and in fact it says on the instructions you can mix it with oil if you want to bulk out your oils, and also it would make your oils more transparent. So that might be the main thing that people do with it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. As someone who paints mostly in watercolour at the moment, though I am transitioning, I must say, I'm going to add a little bit onto here as well, because there's plenty on my rag. And then I'm going to set them aside as I go so that they can dry. I'm not going to do the inside. This is be a butterfly themed journal. On the inside I've got lots of artwork, but that's unlikely to be affected, you know, if it was sat on a table somewhere. So I'm just going to go ahead and do each of these. This has got a little bit of washi tape on the edge, so this will be a good experiment today to see what that does. Does it move the washi tape? I've just done a video on a watercolour journal, and I put the washi tape on at the end of the journal over the waxed surface, and it wouldn't adhere. So I had to use a glue to get the washi tape to stick down. So I don't know how it's going to behave with the wax on top, and so worth doing as a nice experiment here. There's plenty of wax on there. If you look on the side, I can see the wax, and I quite like the idea that there's a good layer. There's a fair bit just there. I think I'm going to wipe it onto the next paint. I'm just piling them up behind me. This painting, I really, really like this painting, and I've obviously gone through a phase where I've folded all these artworks ready for journaling, but I'm a bit sorry about that one because it's really beautiful, but it's been bent and there's no coming back. Once you've bent watercolour paper, it's kind of hard to try and get it back to being flat, so just go for it instead and turn it into a journal. And hopefully it'll be a journal that sells really quickly. So you may want to turn your watercolours into paintings for display, such as the one I showed you, this one here that's mounted onto canvas. But you can also mount watercolours once you've sealed them, and I do recommend sealing before mounting because you won't get wax in the edges of it that way. And you can also mount watercolours on board. You can mount watercolour on wood, as long as it's a surface that is acid-free. You can mount a watercolour onto it, but sealing it is so the way to go. It's absolutely a wonderful thing to do. I've picked up some colour. I can see I'm spreading it around here. So I often use, this is a bit of that powdered watercolour, and it's picking it up. So that wasn't like watercolour that goes into the paper and settles. So that's why some of this colour is moving around, but that's okay. Easy to trim the edge. And once I've committed to its journey, you just got to move ahead and not worry, and think about creating something new. This will be a small journal. I am so past exhibiting. I don't mind doing markets, and I've got a couple of contacts in shops to sell my cards and things. I don't bother waxing cards unless it's got some media on it that's going to come off on someone's hands. Like if you've used pastel on something like a card and you don't want it to come off on the consumer's hands, then you could seal it just like this one, because you don't want them to have an experience where they're picking up your card and then discovering that they're getting media on their hands. So you could seal it. Having said that, fair warning, I reckon the sealer would, I'm going to change my cloth because this is very white. I'm going to turn it over. Yeah, so back to the pastel. If you were sealing pastel, I very much suspect it would move around when you go to add this wax medium. Just works brilliantly on watercolour, and with this beautiful watercolour paper, the watercolour has entered the fibres of the watercolour paper. The watercolour paper, in fact, is designed exactly for that, so that the paint goes into the fibres. And that's why you can never remove 100% of watercolour. Well, usually you can't remove 100%. There's never any definites in art. I reckon there's often a way around things. I love this one too. Not really as saleable as a painting, so perfect as a journal cover. Just move that one out as well. So in terms of drying time, it's a bit of a guessing game, which is why I'm doing these in bulk, because this way, when I come to make some journals, I've waxed all of my covers, and this means that, just just turning it over. Oh, it's picking up little tiny bits of stuff. Yeah, so if you do them all in bulk, then you can set them aside for a week and it will totally be dry in a week. In fact, it's touch dry in an hour, so it's probably all it needs is a day. But again, I'm totally guessing and I am not sure. But I do love this stuff, and especially the Dorlands, because it doesn't smell. I think the cleanup is with terps though, which is why I just use a little rag that I'm then going to throw away. I don't know if you can see some of that medium coming up. So I think I've used some of those jelly rolls that are quite dissolvable. Yeah, and little bits of gold. So I've gone over it with lots of gold. I'm going to turn, no, I'm not. There's lots of media just there. So the little bits of gold are coming up, unfortunately. Oh, I've just removed a whole bit of gold. Okay, so not ideal on that. That is so worth discovering before you look. Oh, what a shame. I spent a really long time putting those little bit of gold touches on. Oh well. You live and learn, don't you? Especially, as I say, with art. I'll just be a bit more gentle there. I'll do the edge as well. I think these were big abstract paintings, and then I've come in over the top, very unsuccessful abstract paintings, and then I've come in over the top and negatively painted some feathers and then outlined it with that beautiful gold. Oh, that is such a tragedy that I've lifted it off. And my next experiment, I think, will be to discover whether or not the gold will go on top of the wax and still stay there. I love that one now. It was such an ugly abstract painting. All right, I'm going to be very careful here because I have gone over the top with this gold. Actually, probably that's going to stay there. If you're wondering how I put the gold on, I've used two types. This is just a gold marker, but this thick relief gold comes in a little applicator, and I just can't think of the brand at the moment, and I'm on a roll here, so I'm not going to stop to go get it. So please ask. And I've got all sorts of different gold markers because I absolutely love putting down, oh, that's a white marker over there. I recently bought some dot markers, so that's been very exciting lately. But they're not archival, so you can't use them in artworks. I'm assuming they're not archival because it says nothing about its archival nature. That will be such a spectacular inside. I'm just going to be gentle over here because, look, I've gone around all the little bubbles. And I lined the butterflies up so that this one sat with that one. And when that one sits over there, nope, that doesn't look near as good. It looks beautiful that way. Anyway, I have 1,000 ideas and I love being able to share them with you. That's looking pretty good. Just move that one away now. This one has a little bit of washi tape on it, so another nice experiment. And this one's got a theme of shells. And every time I go to the beach, I pick up a shell or two. And so I've got a little collection. They're all kind of dodgy looking shells because they're the ones that no one wanted, I think, when you go to the beach and they've been left there. Oh, look, I put a black edge around it. I love that. You can see that before I added some sort of highlight to it, it was just very, very abstract and kind of a dull abstract. I had a great time creating it. Sometimes when you're having a great time creating, you create something marvellous. And sometimes when you're having a great time creating, all you do is create something that's in the range of abstract expressionism. And I don't ever think that paintings that are in the style or of abstract expressionists, I don't think they're ever paintings that are to be viewed generally. They're just an expression. And oh, I don't know if you can see how beautiful that purple is coming up with the addition of the wax. It's possible that this one has been waxed before. I wonder if that's the second layer, and maybe it gets more beautiful on the second application. I tend to do these in bulk, and this one wasn't labelled, so I wasn't sure, and I thought, well, I'll just redo it. You can always do with another layer. This one opens like that. That's quite cool. This one's going to be a spectacular cover. I love that. This has got all sorts of gold mica that's been sprinkled all over it. And gold mica itself gives a beautiful luster. You buy gold mica, but I don't know that it actually is mica. It's just called gold mica, which is a little bit like vellum. They call that paper vellum, but the word comes from the illuminated manuscripts when they would be illuminating manuscripts. I don't know, is that like the 11th century or something? And, they used actual vellum. And vellum, the real meaning of vellum, is animal skins that they've prepared because they didn't have paper back then. Oh, this one's going to be beautiful with the wax on it. Some of the colours just come up straight away, like that red and that blue are just getting a beautiful luster to it. One of the things that happens when you're painting in watercolour, I've just put a bit of gold. Oh no, that was there. One of the things that happens when you're painting in watercolour is you put the colour down and you get all excited because the colours are so vibrant and beautiful, but they're exaggerated a little more, as in a little more saturated, because the water acts as an element to kind of saturate your colours. And it can be a bit disappointing when it dries lighter than the colours dry lighter, because the water evaporates and you're left with the real colour, which is why people absolutely love painting in oils. When you paint in oils, that colour goes down, and when it dries, it's the exact same colour, completely beautiful. And acrylics do the opposite to watercolour. When you put the acrylics down and then you let it dry, it gets darker. Watercolour gets lighter, acrylic gets darker, oils stay the same. I think that one is so beautiful. I love that one. Sometimes I will have a bit of trouble parting with ones that I love. Oh, this was part of I have to show you this. This was part of a really big painting. It was on a full sheet and there were a series of butterflies. I'm going to be kind of gentle to those gold embellishments. It's a relief. I don't know if you can see that, but when you rub your finger on it, it's a relief. And I love that idea that you add these textural elements to them. But I really loved these paintings, tried to sell them. And then I get really frustrated when things don't sell, and then I cut them up. And that way I can move them on in other ways. So they, 3/4 of that painting has already been moved on. They were beautiful cards, really beautiful cards. This is a really big painting. I was thinking that this one, if you can see that I've already bent that, I'll just show you. I've already given it a fold. Part of why I give it a fold is because I can be full of indecision. And I find if I fold the painting rather than think about it anymore, or wistfully imagine that someone might buy the painting, rather than do that, which is a waste of my energy, and I've got a lot of creative energy. And it's much better to use your creative energy in creating more, because that just makes me feel wonderful. Oh, that was a big one, that one. It's a full sheet. Onto the floor. And as I say, if a little bit of wax ends up on the floor, it doesn't matter. So I think this is the last, yes. With this one, it's going to become a journal. I've given it a spine. This is the front. That's how it looked before. I don't know if you can see that it was a little bit off, the composition. And that's because I hadn't spent much time on it, on the composition. I spent a long time creating the painting. I really enjoyed it. So I've put some of this black bookbinding tape to enhance the spine, because I'm thinking I'll be putting a number of signatures in, and then I've created some pockets there. So I'm pretty excited about this one. If you've got any suggestions, any questions, I would love it if you'd write it in the comments below. You can really share your knowledge that way. It's quite lovely. You'll feel good if you share your knowledge. At first, when I began teaching, I was kind of hesitant to share all my knowledge, because I felt like, well, you know, I took decades to acquire all this knowledge. Why would I give it away? But it's really quite amazing what happens when you share your knowledge. Other people then share their knowledge. I've had the most wonderful students in class who have really appreciated me sharing my knowledge, and then they've shared stuff like this. This came from a wonderful student called Christine, who came to lots of classes. She was really good, but she was also incredibly generous. And she had all this knowledge about a range of stuff that I had no idea about. My knowledge was focused completely on watercolour and every different way to use it and express with it, and the paper, and I really became quite an expert in watercolour. Loved doing that. But this student, Christine, and Christine, if you're listening, thank you so much for being generous in return. She put me onto this Dorland's wax, and I don't remember what she'd used it for, but there are a few things she put me onto that were very cool. All right, I'm at the end. Okay. If you've watched to the end of the video, I so appreciate it, and I hope you learnt something, and I hope you consider writing something in the comments below to either ask me something or share something that you know about watercolour, or about sealing watercolours, or about the products, or anything like that. I really appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much. See you next time. Bye.